Sensationally silver, because you are.
Welcome, everyone, to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age, people who are going to bring you information, inspiration, and validation. Join us. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age. My guest today is a repeat guest. I've had her on before. I think the world of her. Her name is Jennifer Parks, and she is a funeral arrangement counselor, which I was telling her before we started, sounds so much gentler than funeral director, right, Jennifer? It's
I
just
think so.
softer. Yeah. Yeah. So welcome. And today we're going to be talking about alternative arrangements for the disposition of the body. Again, a phrase that's kind of new to me, at least. So, Jennifer, dive right in. Tell us what some of those are alternative. I mean, we all know about burial, we all know about cremation.
Right.
What else is there?
Well, there are green options where there's a little bit lighter footprint on the earth. There is something called alkaline hydrolysis, which is water cremation instead of fire. There is so what's new and kind of up and coming is what's called natural organic reduction or human composting. And then the other phrase is terramation. So similar to cremation, but where the body breaks down, but in a gentler, more natural way to return to the earth. So there are, of course, green burials where folks can decide that they don't want to be embalmed. They don't want outer burial containers called vaults. They can be buried in a wicker or bamboo type of casket, or simply shrouded and laid in the ground. Those cemeteries are different from traditional cemeteries in that they allow for that, number one, because most traditional cemeteries, you have to have a vault, you have to have a rigid container or a casket. And you've always, in California, always had the option to be embalmed or not. So there's just a little bit more thought being put into what are we putting into the earth? How do we want to return?
So, what are some of the pros and cons about this approach? I mean, I guess I'm asking, why doesn't everybody do this now?
Well, what was old is new again, right? What we did 200 years ago is like, I don't know, we got away from those things because a lot of people died, industries were made, manufacturing happened, and then we outsourced death, right, to hospitals and other people so that we didn't have to have that in our house because who wants that, right? But I think that as this generation ages, especially baby boomers who are thinking about maybe not doing what their parents did, which is, it seems to be a common theme. They don't want the same kind of celebrations. They don't want a traditional, sad process that takes days to get through. And then with the body being embalmed and preserved and the formaldehyde that goes into that preservation. And then we're putting all these, precious woods and metals in the ground. And what does that do to the earth and the expense and all of the things that go along with that? So this generation has said, wait, isn't there a more natural way that we could do this? We already know that our carbon footprint is pretty heavy, and how can we affect some kind of change?
So, in some ways, this is a person's gift at the end of life,
Exactly.
planet, saying, I don't want to be preserved in a sort of a false way. I want to do or allow nature to do what nature does.
But nature does. Absolutely.
Body that has served its purpose and now isn't carrying that life force anymore,
That's right.
let nature take care of it.
Yeah.
I've looked up quite a bit of this online, and I saw those willow caskets that are for the green burial. They're quite beautiful.
They are beautiful.
They are. They're like a
Um,
work of art. Okay,
and
so how about going through this one by one, if you will, Jennifer,
sure.
and explaining to our viewers and our listeners what each one of these options entails, involves, maybe in general the cost
Sure.
and the pluses and minuses of each option.
Sure. Well, green burial is just as if it were a traditional burial without all the hoopla, right? So you can still have services. You can still have services in a church. You can have them at the graveside. You can have a celebration of life. All of those things still happen, right? With any kind of disposition, whether you're cremated, whether you're buried, whether you're composted, all those things happen anyways. The celebration of someone's life and relationship with the people that they love isn't influenced by the way we take care of their body. So, green cemeteries or hybrid cemeteries are cemeteries specifically designed to not use the things that traditional cemeteries use. Like a vault is like almost like a shoebox that the casket is put inside of, and then that shoebox is put in the ground. The purpose of the vault is to allow for heavy equipment to go over the land and that the land won't cave in. So it's a little bit of a protective mechanism around the casket. Um, and in green cemeteries, that's not required. You can simply shroud the body in a sheet, in a burial shroud, in whatever you'd like to, and just simply be put in the ground. So the benefit to that is that you don't have the precious metals or woods or embalming fluid, formaldehyde chemicals going into the ground. And the body is allowed to naturally decompose in the time that it takes to do so. You become part of the ecosystem. The other thing that we have here that people don't think about is a very natural green burial situation in whole body burial at sea. So it is allowed in Santa Barbara County to have your body buried in the ocean. It doesn't have to be cremated first. There's a boat company here in town who's modified their boat to make it easier for the families to go out with them and to send their loved one off into the ocean and become part of the ocean life and food and the food chain there.
What does that involve with the body? I mean, because any of us who have read mysteries, we know that
Right.
bodies don't stay down
That's
for a
right.
while. So what does that mean?
So we shroud the body, and then in some cases, if they decide on a shroud rather than a casket, we put several 50-pound weights of sand. So they're just sandbags filled that go in with the body to help keep it down. And then the boat goes out about 10 miles, whatever that is in nautical miles, but there's a deep shelf about 600 feet down. So the body is placed in the ocean and it sinks down. If the family chooses to use a casket instead, usually it's a biodegradable situation like willow or bamboo, and holes are drilled in the bottom so that the water can come in and use that as a weight.
I have a feeling, Jennifer, and you tell me if I'm wrong. I'm guessing that the same boat that provides this service is also sort of a party boat. Am I
Well,
mistaken?
there's only one boat here in town who does it. It's the Sunset Kid. and they do charters for other things, sure. But they have designed this mechanism where the body can lay there and then there's rollers on it to easily roll it off.
Okay, so in a way, if that's what you're thinking you want at the end of your life, you want a celebration, that's an option.
That's the way to do it.
Here's the Sunset Kid.
That's right.
These kinds of things, before we go on to the other options, for instance, the green burial, that's not generally available. Like in this state, throughout California, not every cemetery offers that, right?
Not every cemetery, no, but there are more and more. There's one kind of in our backyard in Paso Robles in Creston, that is a natural burial preserve. They allow for the body to be shrouded for, basically placed in the earth. That is well, besides there is a hybrid cemetery in San Luis Obispo where half of the cemetery is traditional, the other half is green. So those are the closest ones to us.
So wherever you are when you're listening or watching this, you need to find out where that is available to you. And one of the necessities then is shipping that body to that place where that green burial is legal, permitted,
Right.
cared for, whatever, however.
And we'll take you there. We'll take
Okay.
you. Yeah.
Okay. Does every mortuary offer that, Jennifer?
I would think that they would. If a family came into us and said, what are the green burial options? Then any funeral director, funeral arrangement counselor should have some knowledge and background in that. So we're here to serve families, and so we will find out if we don't know.
Is there any resistance in general in that whole industry?
Some, I would say, certainly traditional casket makers and vault companies and things like that don't see the value because they want to sell vaults and traditional caskets, but there are more and more companies popping up. There's an amazing shroud maker in San Francisco. Her name is Esmeralda, and she has a company called Kincaraco. And she creates these beautiful burial shrouds that are not traditional. Her background is in costume design. And when her mom died, there wasn't anything appropriate for her mom, so she made one. And so incredible woman, incredible talent. There's a national company called Passages International that makes biodegradable urns. They make biodegradable caskets, really beautiful. Because you think about like, is it just thrown together? Is it just, something that looks shoddy? They're not, they're absolutely incredible. And then families can build their own. If they want, they can build a beautiful casket made of wood that would biodegrade over time and just not use any shellac or varnish or anything like that. I've had many families make their own caskets.
That makes so much sense because, as you said, that's what people used to do.
Of
If
course.
someone in the family didn't do it, then there was someone somewhere in the town or wherever who could put that together.
Yeah, you and I took care of the body.
Mhm.
We washed, we bathed, we did the ritual, we adorned with flowers, we burned sage, we had ceremony, and the men would build the casket and dig the hole.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, there's something kind of lovely about that.
yeah,
That, well, so many of our things have changed, the way we do things, the way we have babies in hospitals. We don't
yeah,
really get born in houses too often anymore. My daughter's children did, but one of them did. But it is, all these things are coming back
they are.
into fashion, if you want to put it that way.
Well, it's because we still need connection. Human beings need connection. We need each other. We grieve communally. And part of that grieving process is preparing our dead and, allowing for sadness and allowing for that kindness that this person can never repay you. they cannot come back to you and say, I will do this for you. This is your last loving kindness that you can do for them.
That's very well put, Jennifer. Yeah, that ritual.
Yeah.
That ritual. And honoring that body that has served its purpose. Now the consciousness isn't living there anymore, but it's done a wonderful job while it was here.
Right.
So, yeah, while it was doing that job.
And it's what we kiss and we hug and we hold and we smell and we, all of those things, they don't change. And there is honor and sacredness in preparing the body.
Yeah, I love that word sacredness and being involved at a physical level rather than just handing all the details over to someone who didn't know this person and didn't spend time with them and know their quirks and their precious gifts and all that sort of thing. Yeah. Okay. So what's another option?
So there's a bill that was passed in 2022 that allowed for natural organic reduction or human composting. It the process won't happen here until 2027 in California, but it's in the works. And basically, that is where the body is allowed to just naturally reduce to essentially soil. And so there are companies in Washington and Oregon that are doing this now. So families in California can utilize that if they'd like. We just have to send their body there until 2027, where I'm sure there'll be companies here that will kind of pop up. But essentially, there are containers that are filled with natural, like organic material, like hay and alfalfa and flowers, and the body's laid in that, and then sealed and allowed to decompose. And essentially, what the remains are, what's left is soil. And so these companies in Oregon, Washington have natural burial preserves where you can donate the soil to go back to the earth right there, and then take a small keepsake home. So like maybe a 50-pound bag that you could put in your garden, your backyard, your favorite place, your natural, your park or your wherever you may want it. But because essentially a person ends up to be about 500 pounds of soil. So that's a lot.
When everything is added in, you're saying,
Yeah.
is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And what else? Are there other options?
Alkaline hydrolysis is a different type of cremation. It hasn't caught on here as much as maybe in other places, but it's essentially like cremation where the body's laid into a chamber, but it uses water and changes the pH of the body so that it disintegrates rather than fire. So you're not emitting the mercury that's in your fillings, the natural gas that it takes to run those type of flame cremation. They're called retorts, that crematory machine. So it uses less natural resources in that it just uses electricity and it uses water. And then the byproducts of that water just get down the drain. And then it gets treated in the water treatment plant. And what's left is very similar with cremation in that you have the bones that are processed and turned into ash. So
And how does that happen? Are the bones turned into ash?
they're basically pulverized.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the state requires that the bones be pulverized enough that they don't look like bones. Because that would be distressing for people if you handed them back a bag of bones. That would be unsettling for most.
Yes.
So this makes them unrecognizable. And it's that powder that you're familiar with.
Are there any other options besides these, what, three that we've talked about so far?
Not really. I mean, there's cremation, there's burial. But essentially you have to reduce the body to something. We can't keep it forever, even though we want to.
So when people are choosing a green solution, what do you see them preferring of those options? If money isn't an object,
Green burial, because it seems natural. It's like it's what the nature does, right? So animals, they decompose into the ground. It's the same process. We just make it pretty, right? So there are you can adorn the body in these gorgeous shrouds and place flowers and have ritual at the graveside as you're saying goodbye to somebody in this way. But I think because terramation isn't here yet and widely available, I think people will be excited about that when that natural organic reduction happens, when it's, be offered at every funeral home. That I think people will really be excited about.
so I can imagine someone listening or watching this and thinking, well, why can't I just bury my loved one in the backyard?
Yeah, the state has a lot of rules about
Of course they do. So let's talk about that for a moment.
that.
Because actually, many years ago, I used to live in a little valley, and I remember some people who did bury the grandmother on the property. They had quite a bit of property, and evidently they got some kind of permission. I'm not sure if one can do that at this point.
Well, we don't want to designate somebody's residence as a cemetery. I mean, obviously, because what if you leave that house? What if you sell that house, and then you have to disclose if there's a body in the backyard. There are different counties, I would say, in the more remote places that maybe you could get permission. Or if you have a very large piece of property or ranch or to designate part of your property as a cemetery, that would be going through the process of each county to determine what is allowed and what isn't. Santa Barbara County does not allow that. There are rules about even cremated remains, what legally you can do with cremated remains. So it's just not permitted by law to bury somebody in the backyard. I mean, of course, there's exceptions to every rule, and each county may have, well, if you do this and you apply for this permit and it'll cost you this, then you might be able to. But as a general rule, no.
Do you see that changing at all? I mean, I know we're not, I'm not asking about backyard burials in a
Right.
suburban lot, but where places are remote and yet maybe under ownership or whatever, is that changing possibly?
I think it's so interesting because it depends on where you are. In Santa Barbara, we couldn't even put in a crematory if we wanted, because people understand that that's something that is necessary, but they absolutely don't want any part of seeing it. And I think as we get more comfortable with the idea of um, that this is not anything scary, it's a natural part of life. It's to be celebrated. When somebody reaches 100 years old, that's to be celebrated. If you're 85 years old, that's to be celebrated. You got to live a whole life. Um, and although people know it's necessary, they don't want it in their backyard. They don't want to know about it. They don't want to see it. And so I don't see it changing here. The cemeteries, the traditional cemeteries, I've talked to them about doing, having a green burial area, like a hybrid, like maybe in this undeveloped area, would you consider it? And they're not really open to the conversation, um, right in the city limits. And for whatever their reasons are, I'm not sure. But the Cemetery and Funeral Bureau says these are the things that need to happen in cemeteries. And then there are the outliers, like the Creston Cemetery, who says, I have this piece of land. This is what we'd like to do. And then they have to go through the process of getting that permitted and everything as well. So,
So it sounds like for changes to happen, probably in whatever area someone is in, the pressure needs to come from the populace, not
absolutely.
necessarily from inside the industry.
That's right.
That's how lots of change happens,
Yeah,
isn't
that's
it?
right.
People
And
want it, and then someone figures out a way
figures
to
it
make
out,
that
right?
needed. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And in terms of cost, the cost is somewhat similar. I would say less expensive. The green burial options are less expensive in that the cemetery or so say at the Creston Cemetery, I believe their graves are about $5,000. The process for the on the mortuary side is the same. We still have to get a permit. We still have to prepare the body and take them there. The preparation could be just shrouding, casketing, placing things in the container with them that they want to go with them. Keepsakes, letters, pictures, whatever that might be. So our process is the same. But in terms of the cost of obtaining cemetery property, could be a little less. Our local cemeteries are more than that. But again, it's 2.5 hours down the road. You can't just pop over on it. I mean, in an afternoon, right? And then the whole body burial at sea is about the same cost, about $5,000 for the boat. For the captain gets a permit. We permit for at sea, and then the captain gets a permit for with longitude and latitude for international waters. So there's a little bit of paperwork, not crazy, but it does take several hours to get out and get back. So it's their time on the boat, which is what the cost is associated with.
So you've kind of given us a whole smorgasbord of choices, Jennifer. Do you have any stories to tell about these alternative approaches?
Yeah. I mean, even back when it wasn't really talked about yet, this was in probably 2014. I took care of a man who was an amazing civic leader and just a peacemaker, and he did a lot of outreach. And his wife, he died suddenly, and his wife really wanted something kind to the earth and to his body and to his community. And so he was buried, he had a service that was like about 5 hours long. It was amazing. Beautiful wicker casket. We used, there are natural embalming products. So we did need to preserve his body because they were going to do a viewing and it was going to be a kind of a long event. And so he was embalmed using green embalming fluids. And then he was taken to Joshua Tree. There's a cemetery down by the national park. And so they placed his body in the ground. They put some dirt, they put some rocks, and then all of the women walked through his grave barefoot because he was Native American and African American. And their tradition was women brought you into the earth, they should nestle you back into it. So they all walked through his grave and then they filled it. And, I mean, those people who participated in that farewell will never forget that. We just did a burial a few months ago at Creston, a young woman who lost her life. I think she was sick and she had just had so much done to her body that her family was like, we don't want anything else. We just want her to gently go. And so they filled her grave with flowers. So we placed her beautiful wicker casket in the ground and they carried her with straps. They lowered her with straps and then absolutely filled the rest of that grave with these beautiful wildflowers. And so there's just a lot of ways to do it.
Jennifer, I am so grateful to you for talking about this. It's a subject that not everyone can speak about easily, but as you do, I can feel myself becoming more and more and more comfortable with all of it. And I'm hoping that's happening for the
Yeah.
people who are hearing you and watching you. And maybe it's sparking people's imaginations about what they would like,
Yeah.
because we do have choices.
Yes, we
And
do.
we can bring our heart to this process.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
So it's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, yeah. My pleasure as well. And I imagine for our viewers and our listeners too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. And thank you to all of you who have joined us today. I know it's a solemn subject, but you know, it really, we're learning how to celebrate both ends of life now. I think that's probably much more appropriate. So it's hard to say goodbye, but it's good to celebrate.
Yeah.
And with that, we're going to say goodbye to you for today. We'll see you next time. Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, is sponsored by Sensationally Silver, a complete hair care product line created especially for people with hair like ours, naturally gray and white hair. Sensationally Silver products can be found exclusively at sensationallysilver.com.
Sensationally silver.